Chapter 9. Venus visits the royal Teton. Any weeks had passed, and the morning of December 31st, 1930, came in with it the master, Saint Germain. "Be ready at 7 o'clock tonight," he instructed, "and I will call for you. Focus your attention as much as possible on the glory of God within yourself that you may receive the full benefit intended on this divine occasion. Remember your twin ray and son, for the three of you will be honored guests of the Brotherhood of the Royal Teton at their New Year assembly tonight." I spent the remainder of the day in deep meditation. He arrived at 7 o'clock, and as I had already placed my physical body in bed, I stepped forth in the one he had prepared for me. "Tonight," he continued, "an experiment is to be tried which has not been accomplished for over 70,000 years. We feel perfectly confident of success on this occasion, as all are now well prepared. Come." We must have traveled at great speed, although I did not realize it, and soon stood on the apex of the Royal Teton, where the heavy covering of snow made it glisten in the moonlight like millions of diamonds. As we approached the entrance to the tube, I noticed a clearing around it for a radius of at least 100 feet. As we stepped within it, the atmosphere felt warm and comfortable. We passed on through the entrance, which had been opened for those attending the New Year celebration. Saint Germain and I entered the great audience chamber and met Lotus and her son, who had already arrived with their escort Imen. Our joy on this occasion was very great, for we had not been together on the physical plane for some 2 years, and during that time, while working out of the body, each had been occupied with his own individual activities which necessitated our being in different channels at the inner levels. The great room was brilliantly lighted, and the glorious fragrance of roses and lotus blossoms filled the air. The sweetest, most delightful music floated in from everywhere. Many had already come and others were arriving every few moments. We noticed a large object covered with a golden cloth had been placed in the center of the room, but, as no explanation was offered concerning it, we remained silent. Saint Germain presented us to the guests, and then led the way into a room filled with rare musical instruments. We saw a great pipe organ and 4 harps made of a substance like pearl with posts of gold, the sounding boards and upper parts being constructed of white metal. The high strings on the harps were silver wound, the bass ones gold, and the material of which they were made gave forth a tone that combined the sounds produced by metal, wood, and the human voice. The tone of these instruments can only be known by being heard, for they were different from anything which has ever been used in the outer world of music in the West. The sound produced by this unusual material more nearly resembles some of the wonderful tones of the ezraj, an instrument used in India. We saw 4 violins also made of a substance that looked like pearl, but the resonance is far beyond that of any known wood. The strings were wound with both gold and silver, and produced a beauty of tone almost beyond description. We heard all these instruments played later that evening. Returning to the great audience hall, Saint Germain showed Lotus and her son the beautiful portraits which had been recently transferred from the Temple of Mitla in Oaxaca, Mexico. He escorted them through the record room, where they were shown the evidence of my former observations with him. For the work being done during this New Year celebration, all members of the Royal Teton were clothed in plain golden robes of gorgeous material with the emblem of the Brotherhood on the left breast embroidered, so it looked like dark blue velvet, the same shade as the great panel that formed the cosmic mirror. There were 70 men, 35 ladies, and the presiding master, Lanto, who is the blessed brother in charge of this retreat. When all had assembled who belonged to this branch, he stepped forward and addressed them, saying, "It is now 11 o'clock and time for our meditation. Tonight, let us pour out adoration unto the great light, feel at one with our own divinity for 30 minutes, and during the following 30 minutes know the oneness of Venus with Earth. All take their accustomed stations, and form an elliptic in the center of the room." For 1 hour, it seemed as though 106 golden figures were united in one breath, so completely were they in unison. At the close of the meditation, a joyous burst of music filled the immense hall, and Lanto stepped before the great mirror. He extended his hands, and a tremendous blaze of light flashed forth upon it, revealing a group of people far in the distance surrounded by golden, rose, and violet light, dazzling in its beauty and radiance. They drew nearer, and the same glorious, wondrous colors filled the great audience chamber, giving everyone a tremendous feeling of uplift and power. Presently, 12 guests from Venus stood in our midst, robed in white, scintillating garments surpassing all power of description. There were 7 gentlemen and 5 ladies, all extremely handsome. 6 of the men were at least 6 feet 4 inches in height, the 7th fully 2 inches taller than the rest. The ladies were about 5 feet 10. All had light brown hair with the exception of the tall master, and his was a glorious pure gold. Their brilliant, piercing, violet blue eyes were beautiful and fascinating. The tall master gave the salutation of the East, touching his heart and forehead with the fingertips of his right hand, and bowed low before Lanto. The others also came forward, greeted him, and were presented to those assembled. Lanto gave a brief address of welcome, only the following part of which is permitted to be recorded. In the presence of the one supreme God and those of the Great White Brotherhood assembled here, these 12 guests from Venus are made members of the Brotherhood of the Royal Teton. The tall master was made presiding master for the evening. He acknowledged the welcome, stepped to the center of the room, and caused the golden cloth to be removed from the objects it covered. Lo! Before us stood the 3 crystal caskets still containing the sustained bodies of Lotus, our son, and myself. They looked as if the forms had just gone to sleep, glowing with perfect health. The presiding master turned to us and said, "Are you ready?" And we 3 answered, in the affirmative. "Then, take your places by the containers," he directed. We obeyed, and immediately a marvelous radiance gathered and drew close around the bodies and ourselves, the intensity increasing rapidly until we must have been invisible to the outer sight. In a few moments the radiance diminished, and to our amazement the caskets were empty. We stood there clothed in those bodies we had laid aside so long ago, which had been sustained and purified by the flame of life during these many centuries. The transformation was amazing, and the feeling cannot be described, for we were as much surprised as is the reader. However, the human sight of anyone, even at its best, knows so little of the tremendous wonders existing everywhere around us all the time, and the infinite possibilities within every plane of life, that all things are possible, and the closer we live in love and recognition of our divinity, the more of these wonders throughout creation will be revealed in our individual lives. The experiment had proved a success, and, as we moved about among the brothers and sisters, all congratulated the master and ourselves upon the accomplishment. They greatly rejoiced that so strange an experiment had become a mighty truth, many commenting upon how much those bodies resembled the ones of the visitors from Venus. The crystal caskets were then removed to their room, and the wonderful musical instruments brought into the audience chamber. Saint Germain played the first number on the great organ, a composition he called Hearts of the Future. It seemed to me the most delicate, colorful, yet powerful music that ever came from an organ on earth. While he played, the most beautiful colors, gorgeous past description, poured through the atmosphere of the enormous room. A group played the next number. The master Saint Germain at the organ, 3 of the lady masters from Venus, and Lotus played 4 harps, 2 of the brothers from Venus, our son, and I played 4 violins. When all were in readiness, the word souls in ecstasy flashed out above the organ, as Saint Germain played the prelude. All entered deeply into the fullness and joy of that marvelous music. The volume and power swelled into such magnitude it seemed as though the beauty and glory of that joy must send forth enough God consciousness to lift all mankind, yes, even the earth itself, into everlasting perfection. There were 4 more numbers played with the same tremendous power to lift and harmonize everywhere until we felt as if the very mountain would float away. At the close of the music, the instruments were returned to their room, and the presiding master seated all in proper order before the great mirror. He took his place at the point of Earth's triangle, and scenes of wonder from Venus began to appear, he explaining every detail that did not explain itself. The pictures revealed much of their system of education, showing astronomical instruments whose perfection would make the scientific world of today speechless with admiration and astonishment, and geologists' equipment for examining the interior of the stratas of the planets of both Venus and Earth. We saw inventors in several of their tremendous discoveries surpassing our fondest imagination. Many of these inventions, explained the master, will come into use on Earth in the golden crystal age we have now entered. Some of the principal inventions that are to be utilized on Earth were explained, and could humanity have seen them, it would take heart and be tremendously encouraged in regard to the future. It may be these pictures from Venus will be taken up and described in a separate work later, providing permission can be obtained. The scenes from Venus finished, and those concerning the Earth came on the screen. Many changes were shown to take place in the next 70 years. These affected Europe, Asia, India, North and South America, and revealed to us that regardless of all appearances at the present time, the sinister force attempting to create chaos and destruction throughout the world will be completely destroyed. When that is accomplished, the mass of humanity will turn to the great God presence within each heart and also governing the universe. Peace shall reign on earth, and man send out goodwill to man. This revelation was stupendous. The closing scenes followed next, and these concerned principally the United States in the next century. The progress and advancement she will make is almost unbelievable. These things are true, for the great God law makes no mistakes, and the revelations of that New Year's night are God's eternally true records. Certain great souls were shown who would awaken, be raised, and added to the host of ascended ones to carry forward this great progress. The presiding master then reminded those present of the blessed Kumaras, and in a voice filled with love and adoration, gave the following explanation in tribute to them. The 7 Kumaras, whom some inner students have known as Lords of the Flame from Venus, were the only ones from this entire system of planets who of their own free will and infinite love offered to guard the children of Earth and assist their upward progress. They came and gave transcendent help here at the most critical period of Earth's growth. It was the time of initiation that is most dangerous in the life of a planet and its humanity, but through their protection and guidance, the goal was attained and mankind has been enabled to reach the greater heights. Many of the brothers understand that every 2,500 years the Kumaras release a greatly increased outpouring of cosmic love, wisdom and energy. This blazing light and transcendent radiance flooding the earth and its inhabitants, interpenetrating all, is a tremendous lifting process, and gives a forward impulse to the growth of the entire earth, as well as its humanity. Just preceding each of these great outpourings, extraordinary physical disturbances occur, and general unrest is felt throughout by the people. Such disturbance is due to the discord that has accumulated during the last of the preceding period. The generation of such inharmony is due always to the wandering away from the fundamental principle of life, and the human sense disturbance, thus created, pollutes the outer activity of mankind, the earth, and its atmosphere. It is to cleanse this, and bring humanity back to the original purity of life, that cataclysmic action takes place. It is following these periods, the Kumaras release an enormous outpouring of light to illumine and strengthen Earth's children, ultimately enabling them to make the supreme attainment. We are approaching another such period, and this time the release of the great cosmic love, wisdom and energy, the mighty rays of light, will not only quicken the minds of the race, but the atomic structure of Earth, as well, making it more luminous in our solar system. Never, since these great lords of the flame came to Earth, have conditions permitted such a great outpouring to take place as will occur ere long. Many who have seemed to become hardened by their former activities will awaken, as it were almost overnight, and feel the nearness of the great God presence within each heart. Many, who have been meek and humble but holding close to the inner presence, will suddenly blaze forth, amazing themselves, as well as others, by the transcendent light they will manifest. All will be done by the power of God love, and humanity will truly begin to realize that it is the height of folly for one part of God's creation to war against another part. The desire to bless others instead of themselves will almost involuntarily enter into the hearts of mankind, and send forth a light that will illumine the rest of the way to perfection. Selfishness alone holds the children of this fear in the bondage and misery which have been allowed to express upon earth, but when the light of the Christ expands the love in the heart, selfishness flees and returns to the sea of forgetfulness. Great, natural, physical changes will take place. 2 great centers of light will pour forth their blessing to humanity, one the glorious glistening presence of Shambhala and its dazzling radiance, and the other will appear in the United States, not however where any so far have been led to believe, but at a point which has not yet been indicated to outer channels of the world. During the present activity of assistance and intense outpouring of light by the great ascended host who minister to the children of Earth, hundreds of humanity will find their present physical bodies being quickened by the rapid raising of the vibratory rate, and, as this is completed, will realize that human physical limitation and discord have dropped away like an old worn-out garment, and that they, the children of light, stand forever at one with the flame of life everlasting, and the perfection of eternal youth and beauty, a visible tangible reality. Beloved children of Earth, you stand upon the threshold of the ages. Its door is being held open by the great ones of love who ever invite you to walk consciously by their side in the light. No matter what the activities in the world without, walk with the light and in the light regardless of appearances. Then, will you find a master of the light who has trod the self-same path before you, ever watches and stands by your side, revealing the true way. The cycle changes and we enter a new dispensation that brings with it a safer, more powerful, and yet rapid means by which the one climbing the path to attainment is enabled to hold permanent contact with the great cosmic light. In this new order, the discipline for the neophyte will be the focusing and maintaining of his attention entirely upon the 3 highest centers of the body, and he will do all his work at these points. Only the centers in the heart, throat, and head will receive conscious consideration and attention. The entire effort of the aspirant will be to hold his attention upon these 4. Only by looking away from the lower centers will he ever be able to rise out of misery and limitation. The center at the top of the head is the highest focus in the human body, and there the silver cord of liquid white light from the great source of creation enters. When the attention of the mind is held steadfast upon this, the door of the soul is opened and the threefold activity of the pure white light encircles the waist just below the solar plexus, cutting off forever the destructive activities of the animal nature in man. This permits his soul to leap forth into its complete divine activity, united once more with the perfection of its source, and eternally thereafter master of all human creation, which means the discords of earth. Sincere students should meditate frequently upon the perfect action of the golden light within the head, for it will illumine and teach the outer mind all good things. This is the light of the God within. One should feel it filling his entire consciousness, his body and world. This is the light that lighteth every man that cometh into the world, and there is no human being in existence who has not some of this light within him. There are many throughout the earth who are rapidly awakening and feeling the mighty surge of this inner light pouring itself out through them, and thus finding greater expression. If these will rigidly keep themselves harmonious, unflinchingly hold their attention upon the God self within, accept and visualize the full activity of its dazzling radiance, they can encircle themselves in the threefold activity of the white light. This cuts off the discordant creation of the outer world. Beloved brothers and sisters, it will be our great joy and privilege to meet with you in January and July of each year, here in your retreat, because of the nearness and outpouring of the all-controlling God light which will soon be flooding America from shore to shore. Now, while the crystal containers are being brought in, let us meditate deeply upon the oneness of Venus and the earth, the omnipresence of divinity abiding in form. We remained in deep silence for about 10 minutes, and then the presiding master instructed us three to take our places beside the caskets. He made the sign of the heart and head, crossed his hands upon his chest, and called unto the God presence. Thou mighty creator of the universe and all it contains, thou one omnipresent God, we await the manifestation of thy great beneficent presence. A soft rose-colored luminous essence enveloped ourselves in the containers, drawing close about us. Suddenly a great shaft of dazzling white light entered the enveloping radiance, remained 3 or 4 minutes, and gradually faded from sight. As we looked into the containers, the three bodies were resting within them. Observing each other, we were again clothed in the bodies the Master, Saint Germain, had prepared for us, and because of which, we were enabled to visit the great assembly in the Royal Teton. The presiding Master blessed those assembled, the brotherhood of the Royal Teton, and all upon earth, promising to be with them again the following July. The 12 from Venus then took their stations upon the circle in the floor of the audience hall. The entire mountain trembled with the mighty God power which they drew, and the light thus focused took the form of an enormous eagle, its body violet and the head and feet of gold. The entire room became filled with a blazing white light, forming one end of a great pathway of luminous essence, on which the 12 radiant beings returned to their home on Venus. The supreme vision those assembled gazed upon surpasses anything words can describe. As the great vibratory activity was lowered, a wondrous crystal radiance illumined the cosmic mirror, and the words, "Peace and illumination to all the earth and its inhabitants." Blessings from Venus appeared across its surface. Each guest touched his heart and forehead, crossed his hands upon his chest, and bowed in acceptance of the mighty outpouring. All passed before Lanto, and received individual instruction for the work of 1931, then sat in deep silence and adoration unto the great light. At the end of the meditation, a glorious burst of music filled the great hall, and heads were bowed to receive his blessing. His voice, clear, beautiful and resonant, rang out. There is nothing supreme but God. There is nothing eternal and real but the Christ. There is nothing true but the light. These three are the one. All else is shadow. Remember, shadows hide, shadows mislead, and shadows make mankind stumble. He who walks the pathway of light stands true to the Christ and looks always Godward, lives in a world of his own, untouched by the seething vortex about him, yet ever working in it, while the shadows last. These he turns his light upon, and thus compels them to pass into the sea of forgetfulness. There is no happiness apart from facing and adoring the one great God, the source of all. There is nothing permanent but Christ. There is no way to proceed through the universe, but on the pathway of light. If you will arm yourselves with this eternal understanding of life, swear allegiance only to your source God, stand true to the Christ, and carry the light you will accept as your code of honor, the obligation to love and bless life no matter in what form it may be expressing, wherever you meet it. This is the eternal plan of existence, and whosoever knows that may proceed anywhere in the universe, explore all it contains, and yet be untouched by whatever shadows mankind has created, in its forgetfulness of whence it sprang. God alone is great, and only unto the source of all greatnesses does all glory belong. He who knows only his source and refuses aught else is wise indeed, for he becomes permanent happiness, and is master wherever he moves. Then and then alone may be become creator of worlds. Upon these he bestows his happiness, and in this activity really lives the divine plan for all. Members of the Brotherhood of the Royal Teton, reveal thou this plan to the wayward children of earth. Shed thy radiance upon their self-created shadows, and point them the way to the great central sun, our transcendent source. My light enfolds you, my power upholds you, and my love breathes through you to those who seek their home in the light. Beloved humanity, may the same mighty radiance shed its light to illumine, heal, and bless you with that divine love which will ever hold all close in the eternal embrace of the one supreme light. America, God bless you and clothe you now with the everlasting shadowless light.